The Mandalorian is the first ever live-action Star Wars series. All 8 episodes of Season 1 are currently streaming on Disney+. Usually with television reviews, I like to wait until I get the full season rather than doing episode-by-episode reviews. I just finished the last episode on Friday and I'm really excited to talk about it. Also, just as a heads up, I am going to be getting into spoilers in this video, so if you have not watched all 8 episodes of The Mandalorian, I would suggest you go do that first and then come back to this video, because we are going to get a little bit in depth here. So in this show we follow a bounty hunter who's only known by the name of the Mandalorian, and he's hired to go pick up a bounty who is known by a lot of people as Baby Yoda. And basically the rest of the show is just him protecting this child, and in some ways the child actually protects him. Star Wars definitely has left a bad taste in my mouth after The Rise of Skywalker. If you guys saw my initial review, you know that I was really disappointed in that movie, and it just wasn't the conclusion to the sequel trilogy that I wanted it to be. So with the way Star Wars has been going, I was kind of worried about this show. I really didn't know what to expect from it because it's the first live-action Star Wars series, and that's kind of new territory for this franchise. I thought it was just gonna be really fan servicey and not really tell its own story. Whenever Disney has been given an opportunity to make a Star Wars story outside of the Skywalker saga, it's always been something familiar to us, like Rogue One, when they get the plans for the Death Star leading into Episode 4, or Solo, just going back to a character that all of us know. And since Star Wars is such a big, huge universe with so much to explore, I've always wanted them to try new things and explore things we haven't seen before. And luckily, The Mandalorian does that. For the most part, I really loved this season. I thought it had great characters, really well-directed action sequences, and it nails the look and feel of Star Wars to a T. And I think most of that can be attributed to the creative team that worked on the show. Jon Favreau is credited as the head writer on all 8 episodes, and he really knew what he was doing here. I was really excited to see what he would bring to Star Wars because he's such a great director with films like Iron Man and Chef, and he assembled a crew of mostly really experienced directors to helm each episode. Dave Filoni directed the first episode and the 6th episode. This is the guy who's primarily known for his work on Star Wars The Clone Wars, and even though this is his first time directing live action, he did a pretty good job with the first episode. The 6th one I don't really like as much, and I think is one of the weaker episodes, but we'll get to that in a second. The pilot is really interesting because it sets up the world in Star Wars in between the events of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, which is an era that we've never really seen before. You see how the Empire is in shambles, but there's still Imperial forces running around on different planets, and the Mandalorians are like a creed of people who live underground. But the moment where this show really took off for me was Episode 3. Deborah Chow directed this one, and it is so much fun. I thought the first 2 were interesting and set up the world really well, but I still felt like I was missing some emotional involvement, like I just didn't have a reason to care about the characters yet. And Episode 3 really solidified that, because you see how the Mandalorian feels bad about giving up Baby Yoda, and he goes back to save him, and it results in one of the best action sequences in the entire show. And I actually felt something during this episode. I thought it was a great idea to establish that emotional connection between these characters in that way, and it just made for a really entertaining episode. Pedro Pascal is great as the Mandalorian. When you consider the fact that you don't get to see his face throughout the entirety of the show, it's pretty remarkable what he's able to accomplish. Even though you're not able to see his facial expressions, he has a lot of personality as this character that really comes through. And it makes it all the more satisfying at the last episode when he finally does take his helmet off, because you actually care about him. And I thought his performance was great, and that his character was really well fleshed out throughout the course of the show. Gina Carano also does a pretty good job as well. She's great during the action sequences, and I think she really nails the physicality of her character. But in the last couple episodes of the show, she has to do a lot of dramatic acting, and I think she really pulled it off. In the finale, she has this one exchange with the Mandalorian that I thought was really emotional, and I actually cared about her character. Taika Waititi directed the season finale, but he also voiced one of the main characters, IG-11, who's this bounty hunter droid that is first tasked with killing Baby Yoda, but then he gets reprogrammed to protect him and nurse him. His line delivery is extremely funny, as you'd expect with Taika Waititi, but towards the end of the show, I was shocked at how invested in that character I was. When he has to sacrifice himself at the very end to save his friends and also to keep Baby Yoda alive, I actually really felt that. It kind of reminded me of Terminator 2 a little bit. I think they might have been paying homage to that scene, especially when he steps into the lava. But yeah, I really genuinely cared about his character, and I was not expecting that. This show definitely takes a lot of inspiration from samurai films and spaghetti westerns, particularly the films of Sergio Leone, because there's a lot of standoff sequences throughout the show that remind me a lot of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and films like that. And it's really cool to see that, because Star Wars, if you go back and watch Lucas talking about the original movies, he always said that it's supposed to feel like a Western. I think in the new films you don't quite see that as much, save for a few sequences. And so I'm really glad that this show has that going for it because it feels like it's harkening back to classic Star Wars. Also, the music in the show is fantastic. It's composed by Ludwig Göransson. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He's done a couple of films in the past like Black Panther and Creed. And out of all the new Disney Star Wars things we've gotten, this one's soundtrack feels completely detached from everything we've ever heard from Star Wars before. It doesn't sound anything like John Williams' score, but I think that's a good thing. First of all, the music is great, and second of all, it just kind of keeps things fresh. However, as much as I love the good things about Mandalorian, I think there definitely is some weaker aspects of it, particularly when you get to episodes 4, 5, and 6. These episodes, I honestly just don't like that much. 5 is definitely the worst. It feels completely detached from the rest of the show, like it doesn't have anything to do with the main story. There's a lot of fan service in this episode too, because they go back to Tatooine, and I feel like this episode was just kind of relying on things you've seen before. And that's a lot of why I like the show so much, is that it doesn't rely on things you've seen before. But this one felt like it did that. Also, the acting from a lot of the characters in this episode is just really bad, and I just didn't care about the story at all. Episode 4 is definitely better than episode 5. You get introduced to Gina Carano's character, and I thought some of the stuff they did there was pretty fun. And you also get to learn a little bit about Mando's backstory and why he never takes the helmet off. And some of that stuff was interesting, but it just kind of feels like filler. And I think this show needs some of that, but in this episode, it just feels really inconsequential and like nothing happens. And episode 6 is one that I really want to talk about because I know a lot of people who really enjoyed this episode. And I understand why, because the action is really fun to watch. But I just felt like every single character in this episode was not interesting at all. And I thought the acting was kind of rough too. Every single sequence of dialogue in this episode felt scripted to me. Then you get 7 and 8, which I honestly think are the best in the entire show. Deborah Chow really knows what she's doing because she directed 2 of the 3 best episodes of this season. And I think she really knows how to make action sequences work, but she also really understands the emotional scenes. And Taika Waititi's finale is so great. There's that awesome sequence towards the beginning where IG-11 is on this speeder bike and there's like a POV shot of him flying around. I thought that was so cool to look at. And also, I touched on that a little bit before, but there's a lot of really emotional, heartfelt moments in this finale. And I was just really taken aback by how invested I was in the characters. Let's talk about Baby Yoda, because it's kind of impossible not to. He's the best. I love him. He has some really great moments in this show. I love the commitment to puppetry. I'm glad that he's not CGI and that he's an actual physical thing. That makes him feel a little bit more believable. And I really think he has some interesting backstory, and I can't wait to explore that, because it seems like that's what they're setting up with season 2. Overall, there's not much else that I wanted from The Mandalorian. I think it's a great show. It has amazing visuals, really great music, really investing characters. It has really well-directed action sequences, and I think it nails the look and feel of Star Wars really well. There are a few episodes that I don't like as much as the rest of them, but it doesn't detract from the show that much. I'm really excited to see where they go with it in season 2, and overall, I could not ask for the first live-action Star Wars series that we got to be anything more than it was. I'm going to give season 1 of The Mandalorian an 8 out of 10. I think it does have a couple of missteps here and there, but overall it's a really fun show, and you should definitely check it out if you're a Star Wars fan. With this and Jedi Fallen Order, the new Star Wars game, I think there's a lot of reasons to be happy about Star Wars right now, even if you're disappointed in the new film like I was. And I'm also really excited to see more of what Disney Plus can do in this universe. Like the Kenobi show, oh my god, I can't wait for it. Especially now that I know Deborah Chow is directing it. So guys, those are my thoughts on The Mandalorian Season 1. I had a great time with it. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, look forward to my best movies of 2019 video. I'm going to upload that tomorrow. I cannot wait to talk about all these movies that came out this year. There's a lot of great stuff to talk about, so you can look forward to that. Also, be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.